Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel Podcast. This is the Robocop edition. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man with the gun coming out of his hip, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello, Tom.
Go fuck a refrigerator, peckerhead. I wanted to introduce the series this way because
Through its idea of comedy?
Well, it's the strange mix of obscenity and wholesomeness that really characterizes these couple of films.
Yeah.
They don't fit well together.
Nope. They don't seem
The trilogy as a whole contains three entirely disparate films.
Yes. Absolutely.
So,
and yet they all seem to almost reset to the beginning with the idea of Omnicorp and their nefarious dealings.
But are they nefarious dealings? The movie is loath to pin down
Right.
the morality of this organization. I'm not exactly sure where we're supposed to land on the villainy of this organization. At different times they're the heroes, at different times they're the villains, and at other times they're just bystanders watching crazy shit happen to the stuff that they make.
Yeah, I mean, I'll save it for the episode proper, but I have lots of thoughts about one of these sequels in terms of that.
But also, like, I obviously we don't do we cut the head off the snake, so I can't remember what actually happens in Robocop, but I think I'm right in saying that in every one of the Robocop films, it's never the hierarchy of OCP that's to blame. It's always some wild card within the organization.
Yeah, and
there's always a scapegoat.
Well,
that prevents you from fully condemning Omnicorp as the villains of the piece. When you look at it now, and they everything they do is a villain trope, and yet the movie just doesn't seem to have acknowledged that they're villains.
And look, we have Dan O'Hurley, who I'm gonna call his character Conal Cochran throughout this entire series.
Well, he has a Bond villain-like exit in one of these films, which is which kind of testifies to your theory.
Well, and the funny thing is the one thing
the reason I like Halloween 3 so much is because Conal Cochran is a Bond villain.
Yeah. And the thing that's funny to me is the one thing I do remember from that first movie very much is the very last words spoken. He, Robocop, I think, saves his life. He shoots Ronnie Cox, and Cox falls out the window.
And Ronnie Cox is the wild card within the organization.
Right, of course. And then, of course, it's Conal Cochran that says, good job. What's your name, son? Murphy.
Yeah.
Robocop. And so
then he has a Mr. Burns style amnesia between the first
yeah, exactly, because he ends that movie with the sound man with that's for goodness within an evil corporation. He's like, everything's on track now. But by the next movie, that movie seems to sway back and forth between those two positions in a way that
really does. And
really kind of cracks me up.
This is completely. This is completely off point, but did you have a point while you're watching these two films where for a second your eyes unfocused and it looked like Dan O'Hurley was walking around with Jordan Peele instead of the guy who plays Johnson?
The guy who plays Johnson, who's like the biggest through line for the 3 movies.
He really is. Yeah, he's the only member of that organization that makes it through to the end. By the end, he's the lapdog of Artie from Larry Sanders Show.
Well, okay. At least we're on the same page there. Let's save it because
let's say we've got a lot of talk about that.
Oh man,
the number that we'll talk about it there. But
all right, yeah.
So we need to talk about some of the actors involved in Robocop 3.
Yes, many of them. I am. But you have hit the nail on the head, because as I was watching that movie, I said, "Oh, so he's just playing Artie."
Well, and it would
just
have
in
been,
this new job.
But he would have been concurrently playing Artie at the time.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
So
to me, the second he's on screen, I thought to myself, "Oh, so he just couldn't let go of Artie when he came to do this movie." That's what happened.
You know what the worst? Speaking of, arcs and through lines, I Mandela affected a through line where at some point in Robocop 3, Johnson talked about Dan O'Herlihy, and I kept waiting for it to come, and it never came.
Well, I've got a good watching these movies story for you that would be embedded within Mike's memories that we've talked about before.
Yeah, let's hit the jingle for Mike's memories.
From that era.
We don't have a jingle.
Because
it's just the sound of Mike's brain.
Yeah.
Working really hard. Similar to the sound of the fan working on my laptop currently.
Yeah, the mouse on the wheel in my head is tired. But
so much data.
I was watching Robocop 2, and I realized that 90% of this movie I have absolutely no memory of.
Doesn't surprise me.
And so I thought, because I had such a clear memory of what I thought was going to be in this movie, even though I knew it was at the end, I was shocked with how much I did not remember. And then I started thinking to myself that I absolutely must have Mandela affected the ending that I thought was coming, and that's probably the part of the ending of the first Robocop. And then all of a sudden, the end of Robocop 2 came, and I realized I could have told you verbatim everything that was going to happen. Kane, you want to step outside? Getting shot and like destroying stairs. And then one of my favorite all-time lines in movies ever, which is, "Behave yourselves!"
Yeah.
As Connell Cochran is yelling at 2 robots.
A guy has bad luck with robots,
the fight
doesn't
outside, and
I haven't even clocked that Connell Cochran is once again a master of robots.
Yes.
At least this film is upfront about that
That's
being
true.
his.
Yes, it's not.
That being what he's doing.
It wasn't a late game time decision like it was for Halloween 3.
Although I would have said maybe Atomo was a late in the day decision.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure that guy was written as a robot. I think that guy became a robot during filming.
Well, at any rate, I was laughing to myself because I realized for the end of Robocop 2, I had Highlander 2: The Quickening type recall for the end of that movie.
Yeah, no,
and it made me kind of wish that we were doing that movie as a watch along, so that you could have said, "What do you remember from this movie?" and I would have told you verbatim what happens just at the end.
Well, we can't do it as a watch along because it's incredibly official.
Right, exactly.
And yet it bears all the hallmarks of an unofficial sequel to RoboCop.
That's one of my other big notes was I've never seen a theatrically released film that looked so much like a direct-to-video film.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, in nature, but not in. I mean, the production value. Well, we'll talk about it, but there's no
Well,
drop
when you
off in
compare it to
production values
3,
at all.
yeah.
Nobody compares anything to 3, except the
Except a nightmare.
Except the subsequent RoboCop TV series, which I'm told somehow is even worse. Yeah, it was fascinating that you have that story, because I have a I have a similarly confused RoboCop screening narrative.
Okay.
Which is that back when I had DVR, I recorded back in the days, the heady days of DVR.
Like
that makes
TiVo
it sound,
days?
That makes for those listening in the future. For those listening in the future, we still have access as a culture to DVR. I just took it off my Cox plan. That's all I'm saying. That's literally
crazy.
all I'm saying.
Historians
don't
my
read
life
too
without
much
the
of this.
DVR.
It was so expensive. It was so expensive.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't justify it along with all the streaming services I want, so I can watch movies for this podcast.
I know.
But I DVR'd all 3 movies, and I guess they were being shown back to back on some movie channel. And so I saw there's RoboCop, so I put in RoboCop. I started to watch it. I was like, I don't remember any of this at all. That I don't remember it beginning this way. And then the I buy that for $1 guy comes on. It goes, well, I do remember that from RoboCop, so I guess this is RoboCop. And then about 5 minutes later, I realized I was watching RoboCop 3.
Yeah, I was just about to say you must have been watching that, because I don't recall you can buy that for $1 in RoboCop 2. But then it comes
it's
back
definitely
in
not.
3.
Well, I was watching it as if it was RoboCop.
Yeah.
Which was interesting for a couple of reasons. This was before we started the podcast, but it's interesting that the film, in looping back to the original,
yeah,
almost tricked me into believing I was watching the original. And really, I was trying to recall the moment at which I realized I was watching RoboCop 3.
Yeah, how deep
and it may well have been when a giant 3 hits the screen. And I was like, well, it must have been by now.
It's a good thing you didn't get up to get a drink of water or something when the 3 hit.
But I knew something was off because, and this is an overall note for these sequels. Tonally, it's nothing like the original RoboCop, nor RoboCop 2.
Mm-hmm.
These, I mean, I won't comment on the original, but at least 2 and 3, they're dealing with pretty much exactly the same material, same stories, same themes, mostly the same characters and a lot of the same actors. And yet tonally, stylistically, politically, completely divergent.
Yeah.
The only thing that is common to them both is that they're both equally broad about how they go about...
Yeah. That's actually...
The equally broad is about as much commonality as I can find between them. It's like
that's one of my notes.
They're both cartoons, but one is Fritz the cat, the other one is Teletubbies. It's that kind of. It's just about who the cartoon is for.
Yeah,
that changes. Which is, I mean, I don't think we've encountered a series like that before. I mean, we've noticed that movies...
No, yeah, I think you're right.
Series go on, they get more family friendly, but this is this series
hard to do with RoboCop.
Well, I know. I mean, it's just the material is not fit for a family friendly reboot, and yet that's exactly what they do.
But they do that, they do that imbas thing, that sequelitis thing of, now we'll bring a kid in.
It's
by
unbelievable,
the time we get
isn't
to 3.
it? It's and it's right from the first second of the film.
And it's just from minute 1, right?
And it's so
So there's lots of
transparent
sequel
what they're
attempts in these movies, where they're trying to do what they think sequel. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Do sequels think they have to do these things?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question.
A child in at a certain place, or do you have to go to outer space, or do is it a must as you go along? Why do those things repeat?
I had a lot of questions about that, and I haven't looked too deeply into it. But if you were trying to infer what was happening off screen, you'd think that RoboCop became so popular with children that they had no choice but to make a kids movie out of the third film. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know if that's what happened in culture, but
because
that's really what it feels like.
That movie makes it seem...
RoboCop first appears in toy form in RoboCop 3. We don't see him as anything but a toy for about 20 minutes.
And not just RoboCop, though. The other kind of Robobots that are... the one that he destroys at the end of the first movie. The kind of big villain.
So I don't, but it's so, as you say, it's so blatant that they're doing this, and the rating goes from R to PG-13, and I do remember that. We have a different rating system in the UK, but I do remember going to the video store and you'd see RoboCop 18, which is our what our sort of highest rating. RoboCop 2, 18, and then RoboCop 3, 15, and it just being as a 14-year-old kid being like, well, that's obviously not going to be as good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So much so that
that's telling my 14-year-old brain it's not as good going to be as good a film.
Right. I had never seen RoboCop 3 until a couple days ago. And that's saying something for me, right?
How did you avoid it all these years?
I just remember I thought the same thing that you thought when it came out, which was, well, that's stupid. That's not going to be good. So, it's with sequels in my younger life, I could stick around.
Sometimes the first instincts are the right ones.
Yeah. It's like I would stick around as long as humanly possible. I think we both know.
Oh,
but once you lost me, you lost me, and I'm not going back to that well after a certain point. If you keep making shitty movies, and
because you were still fighting, you were going into Halloween Kills, going, there's no way they're going to put Jamie Lee Curtis back in a hospital bed. I remember you were like, they won't. It's just the trailer. They just made it look that way.
How could they possibly?
So yeah, I'm
an optimist.
But this is your line in the sand.
Yes, and it's one of those movies that I think is kind of famously maligned, though.
Yeah.
The third one.
Well, it's the project, isn't it? That's quite interesting that both of us were put off by not necessarily the film.
And also, Peter Weller's not back, so
yeah.
To me, that was also a red line. If you can't get your cast back. Yeah. But meanwhile, I think I read that he was just doing Naked Lunch, and he had met. Is it Cronenberg? He had met Cronenberg.
Yeah, Cronenberg
I think
is Naked Lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, and they got on very well, maybe on another movie or something like that, and they wanted to do something together, and it ended up being Naked Lunch. He's like, "I'm good. You guys go do your RoboCop."
It's interesting. It's similar to the story about, when Sean Connery was asked to be Cyborg in Star Trek V.
Mm-hmm.
And, he said, "Oh, I'm working on this. Sorry, I have this other project." It's always good to have an excuse like that in your back pocket, I think, when you're asked to do these things that are going to end up as famously terrible films.
Yeah.
Except
I just heard a really good story akin to that on another podcast. That you can listen to in addition to this podcast, everyone. But Edward Norton was on Smartless, and he said he was in the middle of rehearsal for some movie, and he was, I think, just frustrated with rehearsals. So they said, "Hey, we want one more rehearsal. Could you come tomorrow?" And he said, "No." And they said, why not? And he goes, I'm going to England to go see a friend in a play, which he was not doing, but he immediately called Woody Harrelson, who was doing a play, and he said, I'm coming to see you tomorrow, and went on Expedia and bought a plane ticket.
Wow, he really Larry
funny.
David did that excuse, didn't he?
Yeah.
Wow. And well, that's not the last time we'll mention Larry David. Because Robocop 3 is full of actors from Larry David sitcoms.
Yep.
No, I know it's that's really fascinating because I think we're both averse to the project of the film, which is to, I guess, dumb down, kidify the Robocop franchise, and for some reason, people find that really off-putting.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because, I mean, it shows such an incredible arc for the series because one of the things when Robocop, the first movie, came out, there was a lot of pushback on that movie from mainstream media and Washington saying, this movie's so violent that people shouldn't be watching it. Mm-hmm. And it was this sort of thing of an overly graphic violence. I don't know, it was
it's extreme cinema.
It was part of the batter that they wanted to bake for that cake for that movie. It was built in as part of the idea.
Paul Verhoeven is he's a exploitation heavy filmmaker.
Right.
Beautifully so. I mean, he's turned it into an
Total
art
Recall
form.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he and he's basically with RoboCop, he's applying that to 80s mainstream action cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And came out with something truly wonderful.
Because it feels like elevated violence, doesn't it?
It's elevated. It's elevated. Right, it's elevated violence. Absolutely, that's what it got. And then it's interesting to see how
But to see that arc for when you get to that third movie.
One of these films, really runs with the exploitation side of that, and then the other one denies it ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of tries to make out that RoboCop is perfectly acceptable fare for children.
Yes, right.
So they're both lying about what RoboCop is. One took the art out of it, and then the other one took the violence out of it, took the exploitation out of it. So they've carved this franchise up from different ends of the beast.
Right. Yes.
But it's also I didn't think we'd be doing another Irvin Kershner movie this quickly.
Yeah.
But and it's easy to forget RoboCop 2 is an Irvin, aside from the fact it's a sequel, that it's an Irvin Kershner film. Because
as we've stated before,
if you're expecting The Empire Strikes Back, you're really not going to get what you want.
You're getting something closer to Never Say Never Again.
It's definitely, the pendulum has swung closer to Never Say Never Again at that point. Yeah.
But isn't that interesting? 2 sequels.
Fascinating.
You have The Empire Strikes Back and RoboCop 2. And they're parts of a trilogy.
Both middle parts of a trilogy, and that is where their resemblance ends.
Right, yes. Because you have one unbridled success.
Some of the finer points of RoboCop 2, you can see, you can put that in the project of Empire Strikes Back with regards to darkening the franchise a little bit. But not much. That's about as far as I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
But
every once in a while, I think in RoboCop 2, you see ideas, but they pose questions that they never answer.
And that's interesting because you could say the same about RoboCop 3. It's not devoid of ideas.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Both sequels have really clear perspectives, almost to their detriment. But the perspectives are totally different. You know, you literally, it's like flipping a pancake. You literally, one movie tells you one thing about policing and society, and the other tells you exactly the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So, they both have very clear perspectives, and maybe this is just because they're so broad, like they push every piece of representation to the nth degree.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But they don't. Neither of them have a coherent vision. So I want to separate that out. They have clear perspectives, but no coherent vision.
That's funny. How do those two things exist together?
I don't know, but these two films managed it. Yeah,
that's really incredible.
They really I'll keep going back to it. They're just two different kinds of cartoon.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, literally, there is a cartoon in Robocop 3, which
True.
we'll return to because
we'll get to it.
It's interesting. The people who made it, you will know the people who made it.
All right. So,
yeah.
I mean, we have a task at hand. I wonder if people know where we're leaning. They might not know where I'm leaning. Okay, we got to rank these movies, and we have to declare for these movies.
Yes.
What do you want to do first?
Well, do we need to rank them? Or maybe we do. I don't know. The way you're talking about it is that they're both equal failures. I mean, what do you think?
Well, but I think one is significantly better than the other.
I agree. So let's talk about that.
All right. For me,
you first. Yeah,
RoboCop 2 is a significantly better movie.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, RoboCop.
I'm glad.
Yes.
I mean, when this sort of thing comes up, I there's the moment of relief where I think, okay, Tom's a sane person. And then there's that disappointment where I thought, it'd be really nice if we could fight about this.
It would be, yeah. It's hard to defend RoboCop 3 on a screenwriting level.
On many levels.
On many levels, but particularly on a screenwriting levels. When the screenwriting rules they're employing are the same ones that are contained in Homer Simpson's notes for how they should write Poochie in the Itchy and Scratchy show. That's when you have to walk away from the argument.
Yep.
I mean, and in a sense, I suppose it's one of the ways in which it's a worse movie is that it tries to homogenize the RoboCop brand.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, with contrast that to RoboCop 2, which is unmistakable in its ideas. It wants to make RoboCop more specific. It wants to make it like truly its own thing in a way no one could have imagined.
Right.
Whereas RoboCop 3 is really about kind of taking the teeth out of the RoboCop franchise.
Completely.
That automatically makes it a worse movie, but it's appallingly made.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Is
from RoboCop 2,
from writing
RoboCop
to
2
directing
has problems, but I don't
from
say
writing
it's
to directing, and man, by the time you get to the end with effects, RoboCop 3 it's a bit of a slog. It is not easy to get through.
And it's baffling because it's still Phil Tippett. I can only imagine he is I mean, he's just putting all his energy into doing the stop motion for Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
Before he was fired.
He's a busy guy.
Before Spielberg came in the room and went, I think we're going to go in a different direction. You can stick around and pretend to be dinosaurs.
If you like. Yeah, because they're the same year, right? RoboCop 3 and Jurassic Park?
You get the sense he's sort of like
he's
doing this thin. He's sort of doing this on napkin. He's doing this on napkins while preparing for the pitch meeting where for his stop motion masterpiece Jurassic Park. before Spielberg pulls a plug. Maybe it's the reason that Spielberg pulled the plug, because he was spreading himself too between. Wouldn't that be one of the great cinematic tragedies of all time if he was Phil Tippett was spreading himself too thin between Robocop 3 and Jurassic Park? Stop taking on side projects, Phil.
Yeah. You can let Robocop 3 go.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So we're both on the same page. But I mean, it's a trilogy. There are only 2 movies, so by default, RoboCop 3 falls to the bottom of our lists for all the reasons we just talked about,
and many more,
and many more. Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. But
yeah,
do you think that there's a good movie inside of RoboCop 2? Like a possible good movie?
I do.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't think it's an altogether bad film.
Because you know what's funny?
I definitely have to. It's something I have to give it. Whenever I think that thought, I have to give it more thought before I say it out loud.
Wait,
but
so
I kind of admire RoboCop 2 in a weird.
All right, so I mean, obviously we're getting to it.
Doesn't sound like it should be true way.
Are you like enough to officially declare it a good movie?
That's what I came in with the intention of doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I sort of. I mean, there's a couple of. So I mean, firstly, I think you know, the production values are on a par with RoboCop.
I don't think they're on par, but I don't think they're too far off.
Oh, some of the animatronic stuff is just sublime.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll break it down case by case basis, but it is a cartoon, but it works quite well if you think of it as an adult cartoon. The majority of it actually works quite well.
Mm-hmm.
I think at times it is a genuinely subversive movie as well. I think if it had got out of its own way with some of the broadness, we would be talking about how it's extremely progressive in how it's representing certain aspects of American society.
Yeah,
but because it's so silly with it all, it's really hard to see the wood for the trees.
But, you know, when a movie decides to make one of its main villains a 12-year-old boy, that's subversive.
That's subversive. There's a lot. There's so much in here.
That's something that I think could have been a more interesting idea than it ends up being in the film.
Yeah. And sometimes this kind of hyper-violent silliness works really well. There are a few sequences that I genuinely am guffawing at.
Yeah.
Whenever I see them, it's just they sometimes they find just the right tone for this kind of crazy ride. This, you know, lunatic story that they've come up with for this film. Sometimes it really hits home in that sort of subversive adult complex way. But it gets in its own way a lot. And that's where
enough for me. Oh, go ahead.
No, carry on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say enough for me to say it's a bad movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, there's
But I'll say this too.
It almost reaches the level of surrealism at times, and I don't know whether that means it's better or worse. Like there are some moments in this movie that I genuinely cannot explain. And I'm split as to whether that makes it better or worse, because it's not about storytelling. It's just about why would you choose to put this on screen?
Like Tom Noonan's computer face?
Well, and a Elvis skeleton. You know, it's sort of, but I sort of, that in a weird way makes me admire it more.
I know, I know what you mean.
You know, especially because RoboCop 3 is so generic.
Yeah.
right? There are moments out of it that could have been from any made-for-TV police drama.
Right, right.
And when you look at RoboCop 2,
RoboCop,
you
a lot of
not
RoboCop
mistake it.
3 does feel very after-school special.
When a stop-motion skeleton is committing suicide repeatedly, it's like, you know, you don't get this in most films. And I really don't want to discount that. But it's also very difficult to say that this is successful either as a sequel to RoboCop or as a film in its own right.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a preferable mess. You know, it is a mess, but it's the kind of mess that I can actually get something
It is the
out
kind
of
of,
it.
yeah, I think you're right, because it's a mess, but it's the kind of mess that I can, you know, I think we've talked about before about a movie that might be bad, but is not a bad watch.
It's not a bad watch at all. It went down very easy.
Yeah,
Too
exactly.
easy.
We've said that
Too
before.
easy.
It goes down easy.
It goes down easy.
And like I was saying at the beginning with Mike's memories, you know, I remember this movie basically verbatim at the end, and that counts a long way for me towards good, because, you know, if it created lasting memories for me since 1990, and it ends kind of on a high note for me, it's easy to forget about the things that I disliked about it before that.
Yeah.
And to count it as a good movie. But I am going to say a bad movie, but one that I enjoy.
There's also that, along with the original along with all the films in this trilogy, there's this kind of accidental prescience, which for some reason counts for a lot to me, where, you know, normally I've talked before about how I'm jealous of the dystopias that we see in the films we watch.
Yeah.
I don't even think that you could call this a dystopia. I think this is just the world we live. Like RoboCop 2 and 3 are set in the world, recognizably the world we now live in.
Yes.
In which, you know, every American city is basically, you know, what Detroit was when these films were made.
Right.
And I don't know, that counts. I know it's a lot of it is just like luck, pure dumb luck, right? They didn't know that.
No, right.
That, you know, police, the question of, you know, police unions and corrupts
cops,
corrupt cops,
politicians,
politicians, right? They didn't necessarily know it would resonate in the same way it does in 2022, but it really does.
But they feel very prescient. They feel they feel like they had their thumb on the pulse, their finger on the pulse
about this anymore. There's not too distant future about this anymore, is there? And
we feel closer to the world of these movies, the original movie and its sequels, than we ever have before.
Yeah, and I guess I can't really use that against RoboCop 3, because I think it is as true for RoboCop 3 as it is RoboCop 2, and I guess RoboCop as well. But it does elevate. There are certain accidental aspects of these films that do elevate it.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually think, you know, RoboCop 2 has a brain. I mean, literally, we see a brain in a tank with eyes,
with eyeballs.
Which again is one of those moments that I think the film is sort of like channeling its cartoonness to really good effects. And I'm gonna say I'm waffling
because my note I think is
I don't want to admit it, but I'm gonna declare I think this is a good enough film to be a good film.
I admire your choice.
Its silliness is more successful than it is detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. It's right on the edge, razor thin.
Yeah, sure.
Wait, and also put it this way as well. I think the legacy cast is still turning in really good performances.
Yeah,
which again we don't always see with bad adjacent sequels that we've seen before.
That's an interesting thought. When you have the band back together,
I think Paul Weller, not Paul Weller, the lead singer of the Jam. I think he's Weller is giving like he's selling everything he's being asked to do, which is extra special because what
I've
he's being
always
asked
thought
to do
Peter
is...
Weller is a really good actor that never caught on, despite being in many, having many big name titles to his resume. He as an actor never seemed to catch on in the way that I think he deserves.
Absolutely. And I think, his absence in Robocop 3 really does tell you all you need to know about his star quality.
Yeah, right.
Because they have a surrogate actor, a good character actor.
I agree.
I've seen him in other movies and TV shows where he's
Rescue
very good.
Me,
Hal Hartley's Amateur, and The Sopranos, various. But something is missing.
Yeah,
and the something that is missing is Peter Weller's star quality, I think.
Yeah.
But even like down to the resonance of his voice.
Right.
That's something that you sort of assume that that's part of a sonic effect, but it really is just
his voice.
Once you take his voice out of the equation, you lose a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna teeter over the edge.
You don't have to feel bad.
I'm such a sucker for this kind of film that doesn't like know its own limitations and takes these enormous chances,
right,
with representation, because like it's not representation in terms of what we're used to now. We now reward films that make the extra step when it comes to diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just as appreciative of films that just throw in a form of representation of certain characters or certain archetypes that we've never seen before. And Robocop 2's got a lot of those.
Okay.
And I think it's interesting.
I'm sure you'll highlight them as we when we get to the film itself.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, it's not the sequel to Robocop that anyone wanted, but I think there are certain threads of Robocop that Robocop 2 runs with.
Well, and I think there's one really big and interesting and fun inversion.
Okay.
That, is a lot of fun.
Maybe I wonder if we have the same. I have the same thought. I wonder if it's the same example.
I call him Stepford Robocop.
If it's different examples, you have to say it's a good movie. You realize that? If we have two examples of a great inversion, then that's it. You have to change your ranking.
You're gonna get to tell me what to do, sir.
And I don't know.
So close, though.
This is a general enough question to ask now. Do you think it matters that you have a director like Irvin Kershner behind this material versus whoever the fuck directed Robocop 3? I mean, I've kind of answered my own question, haven't I, really? But you know what I mean? Like,
it's not a fair question when you pose it like you just did.
It's not. It doesn't feel like anonymously made. It feels like
you're right.
It feels like a director who really wants to put his stamp on this material.
Oh man.
Whereas whoever is in charge of Robocop 3, I feel like just wants to get out of the room without everyone pinning the failure of it on him.
I think whoever did Robocop 3 is trying to get to the end before he's fired.
Yeah, it's just every time you turn around to ask him a question, he's slowly backing out of the room.
Yeah.
But we're not even going to have the conversation about Robocop 3, I assume, at this point. Being a good movie. No.
I mean, we both think it's bad.
Is it? Oh, here's a question. Given what you've revealed, is it better or worse than you expected it to be? Given that you've avoided it for for what, 3 decades.
That's a general enough question that I will answer it like this, and
Okay.
you might be pleased by this because I think the answer is both. 'Cause
Yes, yeah.
at the beginning of this movie, there is a car chase, and most
Oh
of
my
that
God.
car chase, except the very end, I remember thinking and writing down, this is much better than I expected it to be. This shows a director that can handle some action sequences. I'm okay with this. And by the end of the movie, I thought, well, I take it all back.
I thought you were going to say by the end of the car chase you took it all back because
Yeah, well,
because I
that
was
too,
like,
actually. Yes, you're right.
But what's so funny is like that you could go either way on that.
Yeah.
Because what that car chase told me was that this is no longer Robocop. This could be stock footage from another film. It is that generic. So yeah, you can. There's so many occasions where I'm just they do more or less the right thing, but I'm disappointed in what they do with it.
All right. I get it.
They kind of, I think maybe just by the nature of the material, they get close to doing things that are profound or interesting or complex.
Mm-hmm.
But they immediately simplify them, turn them into mush. Because of this inept. I mean, it's beyond.
See, the
inept
bar was so
storytelling.
low for me that when I saw a generic,
Yeah.
well, competently, at least at the beginning,
Right
portion of a car chase, I thought, oh,
Rockford Files reunion
yes,
level. Absolutely.
totally, Magnum PI. Come on.
You're just grateful for that. You're just grateful for that level. Yeah, and I think absolutely. Just as you're grateful. I mean, let's make no bones about it. There's some fantastic.
Actually, you know what?
actors
It's
in
more
this
like
film.
A-Team. But sorry, what were you saying?
You take that back. There's nothing generic about an 18 car chase.
Except within how they relate to themselves and each other.
You go away and think about what you just said. No. I'll Peter O'Toole you. No, just think about what you just said. Yeah, it's also, we when we get there, we're gonna have to talk about this ensemble that they've put together.
Oh yeah.
From seemingly the casting room at Seinfeld.
Yeah.
It's just it's
one of my notes for RoboCop
that...
3 is it's really fun to watch really great actors kind of fail with really bad dialogue and writing.
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
But if even they can't sell it, I mean, you're in trouble,
Who can?
right? Yeah, nobody can.
All right, so we're both RoboCop 2 followed by RoboCop 3. I'm going to call RoboCop 2 bad, barely. You're going to call RoboCop 2 good, barely.
Good, barely,
and
yes.
We both think RoboCop 3 is bad.
Yeah, I think I want to like it more than I do. But I don't. Because I think there's so many parts of the movie that if they'd have just tweaked, if they'd have just add like a tiny bit of nuance here, or or just said, oh, that's too obvious, let's not do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, you've got the bare bones of like a decent,
right.
Admittedly not outstanding but watchable film. But they're just below that at all times.
And the funny thing is that they're just below that for most of the movie, but then the end goes to a place that is, at least for me, failure writ large.
Yeah.
Just all over the place.
And and it's kind of failures within failures, because there's an entire element of the film that is just not incorporated into the main body of the story with regards to everything with regards to Otomo feels like it's happening in another film.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, that's being made adjacent to this one.
Feels like it's a divergent story from like Rising Sun. Like if Rising Sun went on a big ass tangent.
We've got a car chase made up of stock footage from from the Magnum PI. Deleted scenes from Rising Sun. Yeah, no, absolutely, and that perfectly captures how homogenous this feels in comparison to the first two movies. Maybe Robocop 2 could be accused of being not homogenous enough.
Yeah, right. But that's why you like it. I know for sure. That's why you like it.
That's why I've learned to love it. But it is that sort of like, it's that View to a Kill level attachment where people can call things out that immediately make me feel ashamed for calling it good. Like, he's blue instead of grey. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's blue for the entire movie, isn't he? They just made him blue.
Yeah.
Robocop's blue for an entire film, and I called it good. And there's so many things you can do that, with Robocop too. He screws in his head like the Tin Man. Oh, that's right, yeah. Forgot about that.
Well, you're stuck with your choice.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna stick with it.
You'll defend it happily.
I enjoyed it. It was a breeze to watch. An absolute breeze. I barely noticed it had finished. Whereas Robocop 3 really was a watcher. It was a come on guys, third act.
Can we get to it?
Whereas Robocop 2, I'm like, I have no idea where the third act begins. So right. I don't. This movie could be over in 10 minutes, or it could go on another hour. I have no idea. And through both movies are guilty of underusing Robocop in a Robocop movie as well. So that's
all right.
That's something something we've learned with sequels. Just because it's in the title doesn't mean it's in the film. Batman Returns. Well, he will eventually.
At some point.
But you're gonna have to wait a while.
Yeah. Even with The Dark Knight Rises. He's gonna go away.
And then
for a
he
while.
Immediately resigns.
Yes.
Batman's
all right,
back.
ladies and gentlemen.
Now I'm gone again.
You're gonna have to tell us what you think of the RoboCop series. Are you in lockstep with us? RoboCop 2, followed by RoboCop 3? Where do you stand on good, bad? Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com to let us know. Coming up next, we're going to get into it. RoboCop 2. The good, the bad, and the sublime. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
We're all just dominoes in the game. You remember that old saying? We're all just dominoes in the game.
That well-known
quip. Ladies and gentlemen, that is how you do a chess analogy in a film where the prop master has forgot to go out and buy a chessboard.
Yep.
Well, we got these dominoes.
Done.
People will get what we're saying if we say dominoes instead of pawns, right? People will understand.
Oh, in the game
There's
of
Robocop
life,
3
we're
trying
all
to
just dominoes.
retrofit famous phrases into our mouths.
All right. Until next time, everyone. Think about that one until you hear from us again.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.